The Mongol Empire conquered nearly 12 million square miles of territory, stretching from the shores of the Pacific Ocean to the plains of Hungary. They crushed every major military power in their path, including the dynasties of China, the Khwarezmian Empire, and the principalities of Russia. The mere mention of the Mongol name caused rulers from Kiev to Vienna to tremble in fear as the horse archers swept across the steppe. But what if their unstoppable cavalry had charged straight into the legions of Rome at the absolute height of its power? Imagine the year 1241. But the Mediterranean is not ruled by fragmented medieval states. Instead, the Roman legions of the year 117 stand ready under the command of Emperor Trajan. We are pitting the ultimate master of disciplined heavy infantry against the absolute king of mobile steppe warfare. This hypothetical conflict is not just a battle of individual soldiers, but a clash of two entirely different concepts of empire. To understand who would survive, we must evaluate their strengths across 5 critical categories: infantry, cavalry, engineering, logistics, and economy. Let us start with the infantry, which was the heavy iron fist of the Roman war machine. The Roman legionary of the 2nd century was a professional soldier who trained for years to fight in perfect coordination. He was armoured in the lorica segmentada, a chest piece made of overlapping steel plates that offered excellent protection against slash and pierce attacks. For defence, he carried the scutum, a massive rectangular wooden shield curved to protect the body. His offensive weapons were the pilum, a heavy javelin designed to bend upon impact and ruin enemy shields, and the gladius, a short stabbing sword optimized for close combat thrusts in tight formations. The soft iron shank of the Roman pilum was designed to bend upon piercing an enemy's shield, making it impossible to throw back and forcing the enemy to discard their protection. Legionaries trained by marching 20 miles a day, carrying 60 pounds of gear, building physical endurance that was unmatched by standard armies of their era. If an enemy approached, the legionaries would lock their shields in a testudo formation, creating an impenetrable box of wood and iron. This shield wall could withstand a hail of arrows and protect the men as they marched steadily toward the enemy lines. The Mongol war machine, on the other hand, did not rely on heavy infantry to win their battles. While the Mongol generals used conquered peoples and infantry levies as foot soldiers to absorb the first wave of enemy attacks, their core Mongolian force was almost entirely mounted. Mongol foot soldiers were often poorly armoured and lacked the rigorous tactical training of the Roman cohort. If a Mongol archer was forced to stand and fight a Roman legionary on foot, the Roman would dismantle him in seconds. The disciplined Roman cohort would lock their shields together, forming an impenetrable wall of wood and iron that would easily crush any unarmoured foot soldiers. Therefore, Rome takes the infantry point with ease. But warfare is not fought on foot alone, and that brings us to the cavalry. The Mongols were practically born in the saddle, mastering the horse before they could even walk. Every Mongol warrior brought between 3 and 5 horses on campaign, allowing them to switch mounts to prevent exhaustion. Each Mongol warrior trained multiple horses to follow him without lead ropes, allowing him to switch mounts mid-gallop. Their primary weapon was the composite recurve bow made of horn, wood, and sinew. The composite recurve bow took up to 1 year to construct, using specialized fish glue to bind the layers of horn and wood together under immense pressure. This meticulous manufacturing process created a weapon with unmatched kinetic energy and range. This weapon could shoot arrows with lethal force up to 300 yards, which is farther than most medieval bows. The bow had a massive draw weight of 100 to 160 pounds, meaning their arrows could pierce thin metal plate and chainmail at close range. A Mongol horse archer could ride at full speed and shoot arrows in any direction, even behind him while retreating. They were organized into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 warriors, a decimal system that allowed for rapid communication and flawless execution of orders on the battlefield. In contrast, the Romans always treated cavalry as an afterthought. Rome relied on foreign auxiliaries from Numidia, Gaul, or Germany to protect their flanks. These auxiliary horsemen were brave, but they were completely outmatched by the speed, range, and coordination of the Mongol horse archers. The Romans also lacked the stirrup, which was not yet introduced in the Mediterranean during the peak of the empire. Without stirrups, Roman riders had less stability in their saddles, making it difficult to fight with the same level of force and precision as the Mongols. The Mongols would simply circle the slow Roman infantry formations, peppering them with arrows and destroying the auxiliary cavalry before the legions could help. The Mongol cavalry point is won without question. Now let us look at engineering, which was a core strength for both empires. The Romans were master builders who could construct a fortified camp in a single evening, complete with defensive ditches and wooden palisades. They built 50,000 miles of paved roads across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East to move their armies quickly. In battle, Roman artillery like the ballista and the onager could tear through enemy lines and shatter stone walls. Yet the Mongols were no primitives when it came to siege warfare. They recruited thousands of Chinese and Persian engineers to build massive traction trebuchets and early gunpowder weapons. The Mongols could divert entire rivers to flood cities or build wooden walls around besieged towns to starve them out. They also used gunpowder, bombs, and rockets to cause panic among horses and soldiers who had never seen such weapons. However, Roman concrete and permanent stone fortifications were far more advanced than anything the Mongols encountered in Russia or Central Asia. Roman walls were built of solid stone and concrete, designed to withstand months of siege. A Roman legion could dig in, build a fort in the middle of a wasteland, and withstand a siege for months. Because of their defensive versatility, Rome wins the engineering point by a narrow margin. Let us talk about logistics, because amateur commanders study tactics, while professional commanders study supply lines. The Roman Empire was built on a complex, centralized supply network. They kept their armies fed using massive grain fleets that sailed the Mediterranean, bringing wheat from Egypt to the frontiers. On land, their roads allowed supply wagons to move quickly between permanent military bases. This system was incredibly efficient, but it was also highly vulnerable. If an enemy cut the shipping lanes or blocked the roads, a Roman legion would quickly starve. The Mongols, however, had no supply lines to cut. Their army was a self-sustaining ecosystem that moved with millions of sheep, goats, and spare horses. The Mongol army moved with their families, herds, and portable felt tents called yurts, allowing them to relocate entire communities as they advanced. A Mongol warrior could survive on dried curd mixed with water, or even by drinking small amounts of blood from his horse's neck. They did not need roads, supply depots, or grain ships to wage war across thousands of miles. The Mongols also used the yam, a highly organized postal system with relay stations spaced a day's ride apart. This allowed Mongol messengers to travel up to 200 miles in one single day, keeping their generals informed of Roman movements long before the Romans could react. This nomadic logistics network gave the Mongols a level of strategic mobility that the Romans could not even conceive. The logistics point goes to the Mongols. Next, we must examine the economic engines driving these war machines. The Roman Empire possessed a massive, unified economy with a single currency and a population of over 60 million people. Their tax system was highly organized, allowing the state to pay for a standing army of 300,000 professional soldiers. Rome's silver denarius was accepted across the known world, facilitating trade and securing the loyalty of foreign merchants and mercenaries. If Rome lost an entire army, their economy was strong enough to recruit, train, and equip another one within 1 year. The Mongol economy, by contrast, was parasitic. It relied entirely on constant expansion, tribute collection, and the plunder of conquered cities. When the conquest stopped, the Mongol state struggled to distribute wealth and maintain unity among its ruling families. In a long, grinding war of attrition, the Roman treasury could outlast the Mongol Empire's loose confederation of tribes. Rome wins the economic battle. At this point, the score seems close, but this is where we encounter the twist. Rome's greatest strengths are actually its most dangerous vulnerabilities when facing the Mongols. The paved roads that allowed Roman legions to march quickly would also allow Mongol scouts to penetrate deep into the imperial heartland at breakneck speed. The large, prosperous Roman cities would become massive targets for Mongol terror tactics. When the Mongols invaded a region, they routinely slaughtered entire cities to convince the next ones to surrender without a fight. If a major Roman city like Antioch or Alexandria fell, the psychological shock would devastate the empire's stability. Furthermore, Rome's economy was completely dependent on stable agriculture. The Mongols did not capture territory to rule it immediately, they destroyed it, by burning fields, slaughtering livestock, and driving millions of refugees into the walled cities. The Mongols would create artificial famines. A Roman army hiding behind stone walls would watch their empire's fields turn to ash while their population starved. Furthermore, the highly integrated nature of the Roman Mediterranean meant that a disruption in one region, like the grain harvest in Egypt, could cause bread riots and economic collapse in the capital city of Rome itself. In addition, a massive defeat on the frontier could trigger a political crisis in Rome. At the top of the Roman military hierarchy was the emperor, who held absolute command over all legions and provinces. This centralized authority ensured that the entire empire could focus its resources on a single threat, unlike the divided kingdoms of medieval Europe. However, if the emperor failed to protect the provinces, ambitious governors and generals would start civil wars to seize the imperial throne. The Mongols were masters of dividing their enemies, and they would gladly support a Roman usurper in exchange for tribute and lands. The year is 1241, and the Mongol scouts under the command of General Subutai cross the frozen Danube River. They find a landscape dotted with Roman stone watchtowers and fortified outposts. The Roman commander of the region decides to hold the line at the river crossing, deploying 3 legions in a tight defensive formation. The Romans form a shield wall, expecting a standard barbarian charge. Instead, the Mongols ride up, launch thousands of armor, piercing arrows, and ride away when the legionaries try to close the distance. This is the classic Mongol feigned retreat, the Mangudai, designed to lure the enemy into an ambush. To make the illusion look real, the Mongols might light 5 campfires per warrior at night to make their army look massive. They would also place straw dummies on their spare horses to confuse Roman scouts about their true numbers. The Romans, frustrated and exhausted under their heavy shields, break formation to pursue the fleeing nomads. Suddenly, fresh Mongol heavy cavalry armed with long lances charge the disorganized Romans from the flanks. Within hours, 3 entire Roman legions are wiped out. The news of the disaster reaches Rome, and the emperor realizes he is not fighting traditional barbarians. He orders all frontier armies to retreat to the major walled cities. But this plays directly into the hands of the Mongol generals. The Mongols bypass the strongholds, sweep through the undefended countryside, and cut off the cities from the surrounding farmland. They use captured Roman peasants to build siege works and throw plague-infested corpses over the city walls. Inside the walls, disease and hunger do the work of the Mongol swords. Ultimately, the real battle between Rome and the Mongols is a clash of systems. Rome was a civilized state built on stability, structure, and permanence. The Mongol Empire was a dynamic force of nature built on movement, adaptability, and destruction. Rome could win individual battles if they forced the Mongols to fight in narrow valleys or defend fixed positions. But the Mongols would never play by Rome's rules. They would turn the Mediterranean world into a wasteland, destroying the agricultural base that kept the empire alive. Even if the Roman stone walls held, the empire itself would collapse from the inside out. The Mongols would not need to conquer Rome, they would simply starve it to death.